You walk off stage after the standing ovation. Your boss just told the entire company you're the reason this quarter didn't fall apart. And in that exact moment, surrounded by people clapping for you, one thought is louder than all of it: they're going to figure out I don't actually know what I'm doing. Stay with me, because this feeling has a name, and once you understand what's actually happening in your brain, you're never going to see your own success the same way again. Here's the part that sounds backwards. Imposter syndrome doesn't happen to unqualified people. It happens to competent ones. Research out of Georgia State found that up to 70% of people will experience these feelings at some point, and the pattern is almost always the same. The higher someone climbs, the louder the voice telling them they don't belong there gets. Doctors feel it. Award-winning writers feel it. CEOs feel it standing in boardrooms they built from nothing. If incompetence caused this feeling, it would fade with experience. Instead, it does the opposite. It gets worse the more you achieve, which means whatever is happening here, it isn't about your actual ability at all. So let's talk about what's really going on, because it comes down to something psychologists call attribution bias, and it's sneakier than it sounds. When something good happens to you, your brain has two choices. It can say, I did that because I'm capable, or it can say, I did that because I got lucky, the timing worked out, someone helped me. People with imposter syndrome almost always default to the second one. But flip it around. When something goes wrong, that same brain suddenly stops blaming luck. Now it's, I failed because I'm not actually good at this. Success gets outsourced to circumstance. Failure gets internalized as identity. Your brain is running two completely different rule books depending on whether you're winning or losing, and it never even tells you it's switched. Here's where it gets genuinely strange, though. You'd think the solution is just more evidence, right? Rack up enough wins and eventually your brain has to accept you're good at this. But that's not what happens. Instead, something called the imposter cycle kicks in. You get handed a big task. Instead of trusting yourself, anxiety floods in, so you either overprepare like your life depends on it or you procrastinate out of sheer dread. Then you complete the task and it goes well. And here's the twist. Your brain doesn't file that as proof you're capable. It files it as proof that your anxiety was the thing that saved you. So next time, the anxiety comes back even stronger, because now it thinks it's the hero of the story. You're not building confidence with every success. You're accidentally training yourself to depend on fear. Now think about your own life for a second. Have you ever gotten a compliment on something and immediately deflected it? Said, oh, it was nothing or anyone could have done that. That's not modesty. That's your brain actively defending its belief that you're a fraud, even against evidence that you're not. It would rather protect a false story about you being inadequate than update to a truer one where you're actually skilled. Which sounds insane until you realize why it's doing that. Believing you're a fraud who got lucky feels safer than believing you're genuinely good, because if you're genuinely good, the pressure to stay good never ends. The fraud story, as painful as it is, has an escape hatch built in. And this is where childhood comes back to bite almost everyone watching this. If you grew up in a house where praise was tied to results instead of effort, where love felt a little conditional on your report card or your trophy shelf, your brain learned something very specific early on. It learned that being valued and being perfect were the same thing. So as an adult, anything less than flawless doesn't just feel disappointing. It feels dangerous, like the whole foundation might crack. People who grew up being told, you're so smart, instead of, you worked so hard, are actually more likely to develop this later, because smart feels like something you either are or aren't. And the second you hit something you can't instantly master, that whole identity feels like it's collapsing. Social media didn't invent this feeling, but it absolutely weaponized it. You're not just comparing yourself to your coworkers anymore. You're comparing your unfiltered, behind-the-scenes reality to everyone else's highlight reel, curated, edited, posted only after the wins. So your brain does the math wrong. It assumes everyone else is playing the game effortlessly while you're the only one backstage panicking. In reality, statistically, a huge number of the people you're comparing yourself to are having the exact same private meltdown you are. Nobody's posting the imposter spiral. They're posting the ribbon cutting. But here's the part that actually changes everything, and it's the part almost nobody tells you. The fact that you feel like a fraud is not evidence that you are one. It's often the opposite. Genuinely incompetent people rarely worry about being incompetent. There's actual research on this, the Dunning-Kruger effect, which shows that people who lack a skill often also lack the self-awareness to notice they lack it. Meanwhile, The people sitting there terrified they don't know enough are usually the ones who understand the field well enough to see exactly how much there still is to learn. Your doubt isn't a malfunction. It's a side effect of actually being good enough to see the whole picture. So if you're the person replaying that meeting in your head tonight, convinced everyone's about to realize you don't belong there, consider a different explanation. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're just standing close enough to your own skill to see every flaw in it, the way an artist stares at their own painting and only sees the mistakes, while everyone else just sees something beautiful. That gap between how hard something felt to you and how good it looked to everyone else, that's not proof you faked it. That's just what mastery feels like from the inside. You're not a fraud waiting to get caught. You're someone who cares enough to keep questioning yourself, and ironically, that's the exact trait that got you here in the first place.